Hi friends, welcome back with new amazing video from Top Movies Recap. Today I'm going to recap a 2010 horror and thriller film titled The Crazes. Spoiler warning, watch out and take care. When the residents of the town begin acting strangely, killing as many people in 2 days as they had in the previous 5 years, the sheriff's investigation leads him down a dark path of governmental cover-ups, involuntary and violent quarantine protocols, and some truly disgusting geezers who seem overly enthusiastic about inflicting bodily harm on their neighbors. We open as the fire rages, pan across to see a whole town engulfed in flames before flashing back 2 days to much calmer and happier times out on the vast plains where the gentle and well-meaning citizens of Ogden Marsh go about their business blissfully oblivious. Becca asks her supervisor, Dr. Dutton, if she can leave work early to meet up with Scotty, her romantic interest at the game. Everyone in town is relaxing while watching the boys bang their balls around. When a situation arises in center field, Sheriff David and Deputy Russell are just taking in the raw talent on show. It's wild Rory up to his old tricks again, like bringing his shotgun into the middle of a junior baseball game. The main difference in this case is that he really means it this time. The sheriff tries to reason with him, but he appears to be in a condition of confusion, leading the lawman to fire the shot. The camera then pulls back to the extreme, indicating that a higher power is watching. The medical examiner at the funeral home confirms that the tox screens will take some time to return. David walks out to apologize and explain himself to his family. They're worried about how this will be presented to the public since, despite Rory's reputation for being an alcoholic, they claim he's been sober for 2 years and they don't like liars. Later that night, Dr. Judy awakens to find her bed empty. So she stalks her boyfriend through the nursery, who is outside carving the hell out of a wooden plank in an attempt to forget what he'd done. Judy is hinting either that she is pregnant or that she ate a large burrito for lunch. They strive to go back to normal the next morning while being bombarded with calls from press outlets. Demi then telephones to certify that there were no chemicals inside Rory, besides the typical substances we all have. In light of this information, David goes back into his memory and relives the fatal occurrence, discovering that Ben forgot to go home after the game, which he does. Meanwhile, due to similar laziness, elderly Bill has been summoned to the doctor's office for a checkup. Judy proposes that he travel with her to the big city on Monday for a CT scan because he is exhibiting signs of neurological problems. However, because Bill is acting suspiciously in the barn that night, under the light of the full moon, the time may be an issue. When his grandmother goes to check on him, she finds him once more idling in the combine harvester. He's so much a part of it that he's not even a part of it. Her mother's instinct pulls her back to the house, where she searches for Nicholas. When she finds him, he confirms that his father is in the house and that he is holding a cut. They try to hide themselves in a corridor closet, but after doing his eye thing, he locks them there to keep them safe while he sets fire to the home. And it's all in the face of their dissents, since they didn't need to be there in the first place. When David receives the call, he hurries out to the scene, where the fireman says that Bill was out casually mowing his lawn when they arrived. To prove he's insane, he begins to whistle a tiny tune right in their faces. A group of hunters discovered a parachute tied to a waterlogged corpse the next day in the bayou. The call regarding the swamp body comes in when David notices that Bill has the same vacant look on his face as Rory did during his event. The pilot, they believe, has been marinating for approximately a week. While the examiner searches for identification, David ponders the plane's possible position. They recall Travis's hearing a huge crash a few days ago, but because he's prone to tall yarns, no one paid attention. They have him lead the way to the location where he believes the sound came from, and they soon find themselves floating above the plane. This is a truth that should not be overlooked, and it necessitates the implementation of some form of containment protocol. On a hunch, David voyages to the town's drinking water master to affirm the source of the town's drinking water. He confirms that when it comes in from the rehab office, it goes straight to Rory's house. As a result, he surges out to get authorization from the chairman to turn off the water supply. It's planting season, which is terrible news for open well-being. The financial results would be lamentable, but confronted with different passings and an obscure risk, he chooses to require things into his claimed hands. A bloody handprint leads Russell back to the station, where he discovers a neighboring bloody hand tied to Bill, who is bleeding all over the floor. They carefully approach him to check his vitals, and he initiates the process. The sheriff attempts to call the sheriff's office to check on the status of their transfer request, but the phone lines are dead and the Wi-Fi is down. When he steps outdoors, the town appears to be strangely silent. So he goes after a faint sound of singing, but all he discovers is a woman trying to relive her youth, which isn't very helpful. The sound of shattering glass then gives him his first solid lead. As he enters the funeral home, he notices Jim experimenting with the funeral preparation process as well as branching out into other areas of interest. He just opens his mouth in time to be whanged with a rod. Sonny Jin wishes he'd gone for the cordless tools, whereas David is glad he didn't in various ways, including avoiding vasectomies thanks to your boy Russell, who's constantly on the watch for his homie's ball sacks back. He tries to persuade Judy to go on vacation at home, but they're interrupted when she notices someone outside, somehow. He goes out to check the barn, but everything appears to be in order except for his pinup girl calendar, which is missing. Then he hears Judy scream and goes outside to see himself being scooped up with the rest of the town and being driven to a central command center. They are unloaded and rushed through the tense medical screening tents. Judy believes they're trying to control the virus, but there's no way of knowing for sure. Judy is later determined to be overheated, and she is abruptly removed from the scene. She ends up at a school that has been turned into a quarantine center, where the virus is being handled recklessly by the administration. Before the hogs are unloaded for identification and release, David wakes up in a truck and learns how they feel. Back at the camp, it's revealed that the fire department has made a move and is launching a counteroffensive with their standard-issue machine guns. Back with the good guys, Kevin tells that they've sealed off the entire town and are shooting on sight. Given this, he's come to terms with his wife's sudden absence, but David begins to plot a course of action. He makes it into the police station despite the barricades. He doesn't waste any time in retrieving his prized handgun, and he also discovers that Russell has fled the scene of the fence breach. Judy is only sexy because she's pregnant according to David, so they lock and load. Officials at quarantine evacuate owing to a breach as the encampment has been overtaken by the infected. Judy discovers that she's still strapped down and that she's not far from Becca. Will they, however, succeed because a scraping noise brings in the gentleman from the cover art, who proves her wrong by releasing as much air out of the patients as possible. Only when the Judd Esther draws his attention, delaying him long enough for David to arrive, is Becca spared. As they return to town and try to discover a way out, David commands Russell not to become sick, an impossible promise to maintain. However, when they come upon a feasible truck, it's owned by a gang of hillbillies who are hunting humans for sport in order to satisfy their off-season itch. They decide to hoof it 5 miles to the sheriff's residence because all the other vehicles have been booted. They argue about whether Judy is truly sick on the way there, and they decide to stop at Scotty's to pick up Becca's +1. Scotty, on the other hand, has waited far too much this evening and requires immediate darming. They only have a few moments to repair their connection before the cleanup crew arrives and storms the house, rescuing his mother. Scotty is a total mama's boy and can't help but gravitate toward her. Both of them are shot after that, and the ground is burned and salted. They gain the upper hand over the soldier when the barn is searched, but show mercy when it is shown that he is only a youngster. They press him for information, but the grunts aren't among those who need to know. He simply wants to return to his unit, but David persuades him of their innocence and agrees to let him go in exchange for clearance and escorting the boys away from their hiding area. It's a significant risk, but it pays off in the end. After clearing out, the party hikes through the night to reach the farm before sunrise. Judy, embarrassed by the situation, returns to her work right away as they bemoan the fact that the town is dead and will never come back. The old cruiser is discovered to be unbooted in the barn, and they start about getting her running. Judy packs her overnight luggage and pauses to remember the nursery while completely forgetting about the au pair. When David goes upstairs, he senses something is awry and is quickly apprehended by the infected version of Rory's family, who would rather he not retrieve his gun. He can use the memories of what he accomplished to distract them as he grinds the blade deeper before using it in a creative fashion. Russell saves him with a shot after softly sliding it out and then walks upstairs to double-check the job. Judy suspects he's infected because of his strange behavior, but David owes him an explanation. They continue to drive at the risk of everyone's safety, unsure of which threat to concentrate on while Becca coughs and Russell struggles with basic ideas, plus they're buzzed by a battle copter. By dipping into the car wash, they lose it. Someone puts the quarters in while they're trying to figure out where they're supposed to go next, culminating in what appears to be their worst nightmare. Russell attempts to tip the crew, but in these tough circumstances, it's simply not enough, you know. Becca is rubber-hosed while attempting to flee, which appears to result in a broken neck and instant death, leaving us to question if our pain would ever come to an end. They head down the road, scavenging for whatever they can find once they've all cried out. Then an SUV comes up behind them, and when David confronts them with the purpose to take over, Russell comes up behind them, keen on retaliation. When questioned, the lone survivor admits the plane was carrying the Trixie virus, a bioweapon that was manufactured. He claims, though, that it was on its way to the incinerator. He affirms that hatching takes 48 hours, and they accept they're secure presently since it's day 3. Tragically, any remaining data is impacted from his intellect, taking off them to figure out the answers to any remaining inquiries. They attempt to discreetly evacuate Russell of his weapon in this later act of wild savagery, severely injuring his sentiments and clearing out their relationship in shambles. They proceed strolling since they have no other choices, making beyond any doubt to remain on the way. After a whereas, David chooses to require a chance and approaches Russell beneath the pretense of basically needing to conversation, mouth to mouth in the event that conceivable. When the rifle is dropped, in spite of the fact that he jumps into activity. Russell recognizes that something is wrong with him and begs them to let him stay with them for a little longer. This works out well because their path is blocked by another command post after nightfall, and Russell volunteers to be a distraction to cover their escape. They focus hard on plugging him, allowing the others to jog down the road to the truck stop, which is now completely abandoned as he drives up. After scouting the area for a possible means of proceeded elude, David arrives to find Judy has discovered evidence of a mass butcher in the form of a tangled mass of burned victims and a wealth of went-through shells. They don't know what to do now that they've realized the soldiers are killing everyone, sick or not. Finally, they decide to make a break for it and, if necessary, die in a blaze of glory. Judy captures the eye of a curious new acquaintance as they prepare. The lights go out when David hears a radio call for some type of countdown. Judy grabs her knife and flees from the bay of thugs who have racked up a hefty murder tally and are now looking to add Judy to the list. Fortunately, she can blend in among the bodies and remain undetected. David runs up to her and the two of them dash to the pickup truck. While David tests his key collection, they may take a break, but none of them work. He exits the cab to inspect the driver, but is subsequently dragged beneath for a surprise lube job. They close in on the topside, but Judy seems unfazed. David manages to douse his assailant in dirty oil and light him on fire while down below. As the clock approaches 30, they find themselves speeding down the road, heading for Cedar Rapids. All they can do now is travel fast and hope they've gotten far enough before the military resorts to nuclear weapons, threatening to scatter their particle matter over the universe. Despite the lack of a refrigerator for protection, they manage to escape reasonably uninjured and drag their radiation-stricken corpses into the Emerald City. We hope you enjoyed our video from today. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel to receive notifications of new and interesting videos.